Welcome back to the channel, Coin Hunters and Collectors. Today, we are going on an exciting journey into the world of United States Washington quarter dollar coins, and we are looking at 5 of the most important and potentially valuable coins in the entire Washington quarter series. Some Washington quarters may look like ordinary 25-cent pieces, but certain dates, mint marks, varieties, errors, and exceptionally high grades can transform these small silver or clad coins into highly desirable collectibles worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars. In extraordinary cases, top condition examples have reached 6-figure auction prices. For example, PCGS records a 1932 Washington quarter graded MS-66 selling for $52,800 at Heritage Auctions in March 2025, showing just how powerful the market can become for exceptional examples. But there is something extremely important to understand before you start looking at your own collection. Not every Washington quarter from an old year is automatically worth thousands of dollars. The exact date, mint mark, variety, condition, originality, eye appeal, certification, and auction demand all matter. A heavily circulated example of a key date may be valuable, while an ordinary common date quarter from the same general era may be worth only a modest premium. So, in this video, we are going to examine 5 major Washington quarter opportunities and explain what makes them special, what features collectors should look for, and what kind of dollar values can appear in the market. Let's begin first up the 1995 P Washington quarter with the Philadelphia P mint mark. At first glance, this may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin, especially if the coin is rusty, dark, dirty, scratched, or heavily circulated. But before you throw a coin like this into a jar or spend it at face value, there are several important details you should check. The 1995 P Washington quarter is not normally considered a rare date in circulated condition. In fact, PCGS reports that the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 1 billion examples, making ordinary circulated pieces very common. However, condition, unusual errors, varieties, and exceptional mint state grades can dramatically change collector interest and market value. So, could a rusty 1995 P quarter really be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? The honest answer is that ordinary rust, dirt, or discoloration by itself does not automatically make the coin rare. The real excitement begins when unusual damage is actually a mint error, when the coin has an important variety, or when a surviving example reaches an exceptionally high certified grade. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design became one of the most recognizable United States coin designs, with Washington appearing on the obverse and an eagle appearing on the reverse for the classic pre-1999 design. By 1995, the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of Washington quarters for everyday commerce. The Philadelphia Mint struck the 1995 P issue, and the P mint mark is located on the obverse near the bottom of Washington's bust. The coin is a copper-nickel-clad quarter rather than a silver quarter. According to NGC, the standard 1995 P quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams, has a diameter of about 24.3 millimeters, and has a reeded edge. The huge production number is one of the most important facts to understand. PCGS estimates more than 500 million surviving examples across grades and describes the issue as having a very low overall numismatic rarity rating. This means that a normal 1995 P quarter should not be presented as a rare coin simply because it is old or because it has a P mint mark. The obverse features the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. The inscriptions include Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date, 1995. The Philadelphia P mint mark is another important identification feature. Flip the coin over, and you will see the classic Washington quarter reverse design, featuring an eagle with outstretched wings. The inscriptions include United States of America, E pluribus unum, quarter dollar, and the denomination. Now comes the most interesting part for collectors, the condition. If your 1995 P quarter appears rusty, brown, orange, black, or heavily stained, you should not immediately assume that the discoloration represents a valuable mint error. Because the coin is clad, environmental exposure, corrosion, chemicals, moisture, and improper storage can produce unattractive surface changes. Cleaning or polishing the coin can make matters worse and may reduce collector interest. Instead, examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look for unusual doubling, missing design elements, off-center striking, clipped planchets, broad strikes, wrong planchet strikes, unusual weight, or other evidence that the coin was actually affected during the minting process. This distinction is extremely important because genuine mint errors can bring dramatically higher prices than normal examples. Recent auction records show that unusual 1995p errors have sold for hundreds of dollars. For example, Graysheet records a 1995p quarter struck on a 5-cent planchet selling for $403 in June 2026, while another 1995p double struck, off-center example sold for $415 in March 2026. A 1995p quarter struck on a Type 1 dime planchet sold for $600 in December 2024. Here is where we need to separate the ordinary coin from the genuinely special one. A circulated 1995p Washington quarter is generally common. NGC's current price information places circulated examples at only a fraction above face value depending on grade, with values around 30 cents to 85 cents in its circulated grades. But the story changes as the grade rises. PCGS explains that the 1995p quarter is common through many circulated and lower mint state grades, becomes somewhat scarce around MS65 and MS66, and becomes much more difficult to find in MS67. PCGS identifies MS68 as the highest grade in its condition census and describes examples at that level as extremely difficult to locate. This is why collectors should never judge a coin's value only by its age. A 1995 quarter is more than 30 years old today, but age alone does not make a modern coin rare. What matters is surviving condition, strike quality, eye appeal, certification, and whether the coin contains an authentic mint-made error or variety. Auction results demonstrate the difference. Recent sales have included ordinary circulated examples around $1 to $2, while certified MS65 examples have sold in the single digits to mid-teens. Certified MS66 examples have recently brought roughly $17 to $37 in several recorded sales, while MS67 examples have sold for approximately $33 to $110 in the listed transactions. At the highest grades, the numbers can become much more interesting. NGC's price guide currently lists values reaching about $400 for a 1995p quarter at the top end of its listed grades, although an actual coin's auction result can be higher or lower depending on certification, eye appeal, competition, and the exact grade. Now let's talk about the question every coin hunter wants answered. How much is my 1995p Washington quarter worth? If your coin is a normal circulated 1995p quarter with ordinary wear, scratches, dirt, or rusty-looking environmental discoloration, its value is generally close to face value rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. Current NGC pricing shows circulated examples around 30 cents to 85 cents depending on grade, while recent online sales recorded by price charting include circulated examples around $1 to $2. A nice uncirculated example can be worth more. Recent sales data includes certified MS65 examples around $7 to $16 and MS66 examples ranging roughly from $17 to $37 in several transactions. An MS67 example can become significantly more desirable. Recent recorded sales include approximately $33, $40, $51, $59, $87, and $110 for different certified MS67 examples. These results show how strongly condition and certification can influence the market. At the very top of the grading scale, the coin can become a much more serious collectible. NGC's current guide lists about $400 at its highest listed grade, while actual auction prices depend on the coin's certification, quality, rarity, and buyer demand. And there is another category that can completely change the story: genuine mint errors. As mentioned earlier, documented 1995p error quarters have brought several $100s at auction, including examples sold for $403, for $115, and $600. So if your particular 1995p quarter is rusty, Do not advertise it as a $400 or $600 coin simply because those prices exist. Those high prices belong to exceptional grades or documented errors, not ordinary rusty circulated coins. A rusty appearance can make a coin visually dramatic, but collectors need to determine what caused it. If the surface discoloration happened after the coin left the mint, it is generally considered environmental damage rather than a valuable mint error. On the other hand, if the unusual appearance is connected to a genuine minting mistake, the situation can be completely different. This is why experienced collectors examine the metal composition, weight, diameter, edge, strike, and design carefully before assigning a value. If you have a suspicious 1995 P quarter, compare its weight with the normal specification of approximately 5.67 grams and inspect the edge for anything unusual. A major difference in weight can be a reason for further investigation, although a scale reading alone does not prove an error. If you find a 1995 P Washington quarter in rusty or dirty condition, the first rule is simple: do not clean it aggressively. Do not use vinegar, abrasive materials, metal polish, sandpaper, or other household chemicals. Cleaning can permanently alter the surface and may destroy evidence that could have helped identify an unusual coin. Instead, photograph both sides of the coin in clear lighting. Take close-up photographs of the date, the P mint mark, the lettering, the eagle, and the edge. Check whether the discoloration is merely environmental or whether there are unusual characteristics that appear to have occurred during striking. A digital scale accurate to at least 1/100th of a gram can also be useful. Measure the coin and compare the result with the standard specifications. If the coin has a major weight difference combined with an unusual appearance, consider having it examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Remember that certification is particularly important when you believe you have an exceptionally high-grade coin or a valuable mint error. A professional authentication and grade can give buyers confidence and can make a major difference when a coin enters the serious collector market. So, is the 1995 P Washington quarter a rare coin? In ordinary circulated and rusty condition, generally no. The Philadelphia Mint produced a very large number of these quarters, and most surviving examples are common. But that does not mean you should ignore every 1995 P quarter. High-grade examples can become considerably more collectible, and genuine mint errors can reach hundreds of dollars at auction. Recent documented sales show just how dramatically the value can change when a normal quarter has an exceptional grade or a major minting error. So the next time you find a dirty, dark, rusty-looking 1995 P Washington quarter, don't throw it away. Turn it over, inspect the date, locate the P mint mark, check the edge, examine the strike, and look carefully for unusual characteristics. Your ordinary quarter may simply be worth 25 cents, but an authenticated high-grade example or genuine mint error could be worth substantially more. The next quarter dated 1978 with no mint mark, especially an example in very good condition. At first glance, this old quarter may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin that has simply spent decades in circulation. But when you look closely at the date, minting history, condition, and collector market, there is a much more interesting story behind this coin. The first thing every collector should know is that a 1978 Washington quarter with no mint mark is not automatically an error. It was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which did not place a mint mark on these quarters. The Philadelphia issue had a huge mintage of 521,452,000 coins, so ordinary circulated examples are generally common rather than extremely rare. However, this does not mean every 1978 no mint mark quarter has the same value. Condition, strike quality, varieties, mint errors, and certification can make a dramatic difference. In fact, an extraordinary 1978 Philadelphia quarter-graded PCGS MS67 Plus has a recorded auction result of $2,875, showing just how far the value can rise when an otherwise common coin reaches an exceptional level of preservation. So today, we are going to explore the history, design, rarity, collector demand, realistic market value, and the important features you should check before deciding whether your 1978 no mint mark Washington quarter is simply worth face value or deserves a closer look. The Washington quarter has one of the longest and most recognizable histories in American coinage. The design featuring George Washington was introduced in 1932, originally as a commemorative issue for the bicentennial of Washington's birth. The design later became a permanent part of the United States quarter series. By 1978, the quarter was no longer made from the 90% silver composition used on many earlier Washington quarters. Instead, the 1978 quarter was produced using a copper nickel-clad composition. PCGS lists the coin as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center, with a standard weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.30 millimeters. The Philadelphia Mint produced 521,452,000 Washington quarters dated 1978. Denver produced another 287,373,152 examples, while San Francisco produced 3,127,781 proof examples. This enormous Philadelphia mintage is one of the reasons an ordinary circulated 1978 no mint mark quarter is not considered a major rarity. One interesting point for new collectors is the missing mint mark. If you look at a 1978 quarter and don't see a small p, that does not mean the mint forgot to strike the letter. Philadelphia quarters of this era were intentionally produced without a mint mark. The P mint mark did not begin appearing on Philadelphia quarters until 1980. That makes the absence of a mint mark completely normal for this particular coin. Unique features of the coin. The obverse of the 1978 Washington quarter features the famous portrait of George Washington facing left. Around the portrait are the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date, 1978. The mint mark position near Washington's neck is empty because this example was struck at Philadelphia. On the reverse is the classic eagle design used on Washington quarters during this period. The eagle has its wings spread wide, surrounded by the inscriptions "United States of America," "E Pluribus Unum," and "Quarter Dollar." The coin has a reeded edge, another useful feature for authentication and identification. Its standard diameter is approximately 24.3 millimeters, and its weight is approximately 5.67 grams. Now let's focus on the condition mentioned in today's video, very good condition. A very good coin has experienced considerable circulation. Important details of the design remain visible, but the highest points of Washington's portrait and the eagle's design show significant wear. The surfaces may contain scratches, contact marks, discoloration, or other signs of decades of handling. This is very different from a mint state coin. A mint state coin has never circulated and retains its original mint luster, while a very good coin has clearly been used in everyday commerce. This distinction is extremely important because condition is one of the biggest factors determining the value of a 1978 quarter. When it comes to rarity, we need to be very careful. The 1978 no mint mark Washington quarter is sometimes advertised online as an extremely rare coin simply because it has no mint mark. That claim is misleading. The absence of a mint mark is normal for the Philadelphia issue. More than 521 million were produced, so there are still many examples available to collectors. A normal circulated 1978 quarter, therefore, does not usually command a huge premium. Collectors can find these coins relatively easily. But there is another side to the story. While the date itself is common, exceptionally preserved examples can be much harder to find. The highest quality coins are separated from ordinary circulated pieces by grading standards, surface preservation, strike quality, luster, and overall eye appeal. PCGS records a spectacular auction result of $2,875 for a 1978 Washington quarter graded MS67+, sold on March 25, 2021. That does not mean a very good 1978 quarter is worth $2,875. Instead, it demonstrates an important lesson for coin collectors. A common date can sometimes become valuable when an example is exceptionally rare in a particular grade. There is also another major category that can create substantial collector demand: genuine mint errors. Recent auction records show that unusual 1978 Washington quarter errors have sold for hundreds or even more than $1,000. Graysheet records a 1978 quarter with a partial collar error selling for $89 in June 2026, a double-struck and significantly off-center example selling for $403, a quarter-struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet selling for $300, and a remarkable quarter-struck on a 1-cent planchet selling for $1,440 in September 2025. These are not normal 1978 quarters. They are special error coins, and that distinction is extremely important. Now we come to the question that most coin hunters are waiting for. What is a 1978 no-mint mark Washington quarter worth today? For an ordinary circulated example in very good condition, the answer is usually modest. Depending on the exact appearance, market, and buyer, an ordinary circulated example may trade for around 25 cents to perhaps $1 or slightly more. Some price guides and market listings show worn examples close to face value, while higher prices become more realistic as condition improves. For a typical very good example, I would not tell viewers that the coin is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. That would not be realistic. The much bigger money begins with exceptional mint state examples. Market data shows substantially higher prices for high-grade coins, and PCGS's recorded $2,875 MS67 Plus auction result is an excellent example of how extraordinary condition can transform the value of a common date coin. There is also a huge difference between a normal circulated quarter and a certified error. A genuine mint error can push the value into the hundreds or even above $1,000 depending on the type and quality of the error. Recent 1978 examples demonstrate this clearly, with documented sales ranging from roughly $89 for a partial collar error to $1,440 for a quarter struck on a 1-cent planchet. So if your 1978 quarter is in very good condition and has no confirmed error, keep your expectations realistic. Its greatest value may be as an interesting collectible piece rather than a multi-thousand-dollar rarity. But if you discover something unusual, that is when the coin becomes much more interesting. When examining your 1978 no-mint mark quarter, start with the date. Make sure the coin actually reads 1978 and that the digits have not been altered. Next, inspect the mint mark area near Washington's neck. Remember that the absence of a mint mark is normal for Philadelphia quarters of this year. It is not, by itself, a mint error. Then examine the entire coin for possible striking abnormalities. Look for strong off-center strikes, unusual edges, clipped planchets, missing clad layers, dramatic doubling, multiple strikes, or unusual shapes that appear to have originated during the manufacturing process. A particularly useful test is the weight. A normal 1978 quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. If your coin has a significantly unusual weight, that could justify further investigation, although weight alone cannot prove that a coin is an error. Most importantly, don't confuse post-mint damage with a mint error. Scratches, corrosion, chemical discoloration, dents, flattened areas, and damage from machinery or other coins can happen after the coin leaves the mint. Such damage normally does not create a major premium. If you have a 1978 Washington quarter in very good condition, the best thing you can do is preserve it exactly as you found it. Avoid cleaning the coin with vinegar, polish, abrasive materials, chemicals, or household products. A clean coin may actually become less desirable to serious collectors. Natural surfaces and original appearance are important factors in professional coin collecting. Use a soft holder or appropriate coin storage method, and avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily. When examining the coin, hold it carefully by the edges. If you believe your quarter has an unusual mint error, photograph both sides in good lighting, and take close-up photographs of the date, mint mark area, edge, and suspected error. Compare the coin with authenticated examples before spending money on professional grading. Professional certification becomes more useful when the coin appears to be in exceptionally high condition or when you believe it has a significant mint error. For an ordinary very good 1978 quarter, professional grading would generally not make financial sense because the value is normally too low to justify the expense. The most important lesson is simple. Don't judge a coin only by its age or by the absence of a mint mark. Conclusion. So, could a 1978 Washington quarter with no mint mark be valuable? Yes, but the details matter. The ordinary 1978 Philadelphia Washington quarter is not a major rarity. More than 521 million were produced, and the missing mint mark is completely normal for Philadelphia quarters from this period. A circulated very good example will generally be worth close to face value, perhaps with a modest collector premium depending on its exact condition and market. But exceptional mint state examples can be dramatically more valuable, with PCGS recording an impressive $2,875 auction result for an MS67 Plus example. And if you discover a genuine mint error, the possibilities become even more interesting. Documented 1978 Washington quarter errors have sold for hundreds of dollars, with one unusual example reaching $1,440 at auction. So don't ignore your old quarters. Take a closer look at the date, the surfaces, the edge, the weight, and the overall strike. Most 1978 no mint mark quarters are ordinary, but the right combination of exceptional condition or a genuine minting error can turn a simple 25-cent coin into a much more interesting collectible. If you enjoyed this coin hunting journey, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with other coin collectors. Keep checking your old coins, because sometimes the most interesting discoveries are hiding in the coins that everyone else overlooks. The next quarter dated 1991 with the Denver D mint mark, especially a circulated example that may look like an ordinary quarter from everyday pocket change. But before you spend it, or put it away without a second thought, there are several important details worth understanding about this coin. The 1991 D Washington quarter was produced in very large numbers, so an ordinary circulated example is generally not considered a rare coin. The Denver Mint struck approximately 630,966,693 examples. PCGS classifies the regular issue as common overall, with the real scarcity appearing in exceptionally high grades rather than in normal circulated condition. But here is where the story becomes interesting. A normal circulated 1991 D quarter may be worth only around face value, while an exceptional certified example can bring dramatically higher prices. PCGS records an auction record of $1,680 for a 1991 D quarter graded MS67, sold by Heritage Auctions in 2019. So, is your circulated 1991 D quarter a hidden fortune? Probably not, but there are important things you should check before making that decision. Today we will explore its history, design, rarity, collector demand, realistic market value, and the types of errors or exceptional conditions that could make this quarter much more valuable. The Washington quarter is one of the most recognizable coins in United States history. The original Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The familiar portrait of Washington continued on the quarter for decades, making the denomination one of the most collected series in American coinage. By 1991, the quarter was being produced in the copper-nickel-clad composition used for modern circulating quarters. The 1991 D issue was struck at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small letter D on the obverse of the coin. According to PCGS, the 1991 D quarter has a diameter of approximately 24.30 millimeters, weighs about 5.67 grams, and has a reeded edge. Its composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. The Denver Mint produced more than 630 million examples in 1991. That enormous production figure is one of the reasons an ordinary circulated coin is not particularly rare. PCGS estimates hundreds of millions of examples surviving across all grades and gives the regular issue a very low overall numismatic rarity rating. This is an important lesson for anyone getting started in coin collecting. A coin can be old without being rare. A 1991 quarter is now more than 3 decades old, but age alone does not automatically create a high value. Let's start with the obverse. The front of the 1991 D Washington quarter features the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. Around his portrait are the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date 1991. The small D mint mark is located near the lower portion of Washington's bust. This letter identifies the Denver Mint as the facility where the coin was produced. When you turn the coin over, you see the classic Washington quarter reverse design, featuring an American eagle with outstretched wings. The surrounding inscriptions include United States of America, e pluribus unum, and quarter dollar. The reeded edge is another identifying characteristic. On a normal example, the edge should have evenly spaced vertical reeds running around the circumference of the coin. Now let's talk about the condition of the coin featured in today's discussion, circulated condition. A circulated quarter has been used in commerce, and therefore shows signs of contact with other coins and surfaces. You may see scratches, small dents, flattened high points, loss of original luster, discoloration, and general wear. The more heavily circulated the coin is, the less likely it is to command a major premium unless it possesses a genuine variety or mint error. This is where we need to separate the ordinary 1991D quarter from the truly exceptional examples. The normal 1991D Washington quarter is not considered rare in circulated condition. With a mintage of 630,966,693 coins, there are plenty of examples available to collectors. PCGS estimates approximately 315 million surviving examples across all grades. However, high-grade examples tell a different story. PCGS explains that the 1991D quarter is common in MS65 and lower grades, becomes scarce around MS66, and becomes rare in MS67 or higher. The condition census shown by PCGS includes MS67 examples at the top of the reported population. This is why the same date and mint mark can have completely different values depending on condition. Imagine placing two 1991D quarters side by side. One has been circulating for decades, with scratches, wear, and dull surfaces. The other has virtually no circulation wear, strong original luster, excellent surfaces, and is professionally certified at an extremely high grade. Although both coins carry exactly the same date and mint mark, collectors may value them very differently. The auction market proves this point. PCGS reports a record auction price of $1,680 for a 1991D Washington quarter graded MS67, sold through Heritage Auctions on June 9, 2019. That $1,680 figure is exciting, but it should not be confused with the value of a normal circulated coin. It represents an exceptional, professionally graded example. There is also another category that can dramatically increase value: mint errors. A particularly interesting documented example is a 1991D Washington quarter struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet. PCGS records an AU58 example of this unusual error selling for $192 at a Stacksbowers auction in June 2024. The coin weighed approximately 5.06 grams. This demonstrates why collectors should examine unusual coins carefully. An ordinary scratch or damaged edge is not necessarily valuable, but a genuine mint-made error can be. Now let's get to the question that every coin hunter wants answered. How much is a circulated 1991D Washington quarter worth today? For a normal circulated example, the answer is usually close to face value. Current market references show circulated examples generally trading for modest amounts, with values depending on the exact grade, appearance, and buyer demand. Coin World lists low-grade 1991D examples around the face value range, with values increasing as the condition improves. Another market reference gives estimated values around 26 cents for VG8, 29 cents for fine, 30 cents for VF20, 35 cents for EF40, and 45 cents for AU55, while uncirculated examples can move into several dollars or more depending on grade. So if your 1991D quarter is a normal circulated coin with ordinary wear, it would be unrealistic to call it a $500 or $1,000 coin simply because it is an older quarter. But the picture changes when the coin reaches exceptional mint state grades. Coin World lists significantly higher guide values for high-grade examples, while PCGS's auction record demonstrates just how valuable an exceptional MS67 specimen can become. And then we have genuine errors. A documented 1991D quarter struck on a nickel planchet sold for $192, proving that an unusual minting error can create a substantial premium even when the underlying date is common. Therefore, if you have a circulated 1991D quarter, think of the value in categories. A normal worn example is usually worth around face value or a modest premium. A nice uncirculated example may be worth several dollars or more. An exceptionally high-grade certified example can reach hundreds or even over $1,000. And a dramatic, authenticated mint error can also command hundreds of dollars depending on the error and condition. If you find a 1991 D quarter, start by examining the date and mint mark. Make sure the coin actually says 1991 and that the small d is present near Washington's neck. Next, inspect the surfaces carefully. Look for unusual doubling, missing design details, major off-center striking, clipped planchets, broad strikes, partial collars, unusual edges, or other characteristics that appear to have occurred during the striking process. Pay particular attention to the edge. The normal quarter has a reeded edge. If the edge looks dramatically different, don't automatically assume it is an error. Damage can happen after the coin leaves the mint. The key is determining whether the unusual feature was created at the mint or occurred later. Weight can also provide useful information. A normal 1991 D quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams. If your coin has a significantly unusual weight, that could justify additional investigation. However, remember that a small difference on a household scale does not prove a mint error. Scales can be inaccurate, and normal manufacturing tolerances exist. New collectors make is cleaning old coins. If you discover a 1991 D quarter that looks dirty, dark, stained, or unusual, resist the temptation to polish it. Never use abrasive materials, household chemicals, metal polish, or aggressive cleaning methods. Cleaning can permanently damage the coin's surface and reduce its desirability to collectors. Instead, handle the coin by its edges and store it in an appropriate non-damaging holder. Take clear photographs of both sides, and especially the mint mark area, edge, and any unusual feature. If you believe you have discovered a genuine mint error, compare it with authenticated examples and consider showing it to an experienced coin dealer or professional grading service. Professional certification can be especially important if you believe the coin is in an unusually high grade. A certified MS-67 example is a completely different market proposition from an ordinary circulated quarter. But don't send every circulated 1991 D quarter for expensive professional grading. If the coin has heavy circulation wear and no obvious error or variety, grading fees could cost much more than the coin is worth. The best strategy is to learn how to identify promising coins first, and then spend money on authentication only when there is a reasonable possibility of a significant collectible premium. Conclusion. So, is the 1991 D Washington quarter a rare coin? The honest answer is that a normal circulated example is not rare. More than 630 million were struck at the Denver Mint, and hundreds of millions are estimated to survive. But that doesn't mean you should ignore it. The real excitement begins when you find an exceptional example. PCGS records a remarkable $1,680 auction result for an MS-67 1991 D quarter, showing that condition can completely transform the value of a common date coin. And genuine mint errors can also bring impressive prices. A 1991 D quarter struck on a nickel planchet sold for $192 in 2024, demonstrating the potential of unusual, authenticated errors. So the next time you find a 1991 D Washington quarter in your collection, don't simply look at the date and put it away. Examine the surfaces, inspect the edge, check the mint mark, look for unusual striking characteristics, and consider the coin's overall condition. Most circulated examples will remain ordinary quarters, but the right error or an exceptionally preserved specimen could make the coin much more interesting to collectors. The next quarter from 1979 with the Denver D mint mark, specifically a coin in very fine condition. At first glance, this may appear to be nothing more than an old 25-cent piece that has spent many years circulating through American commerce. But when you examine the date, mint mark, condition, history, and collector market, this coin becomes an interesting piece of American coinage history. The 1979 D Washington quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, and according to PCGS, the issue had a mintage of 489,789,780 coins. That means an ordinary circulated 1979 D quarter is not considered a major rarity, simply because of its date or D mint mark. However, the market becomes much more interesting when we look at exceptional condition, rare errors, and high-grade certified examples. In fact, PCGS records an auction record of $1,078 for a 1979 D Washington quarter graded MS-67, sold at Great Collections on August 17, 2014. That is a remarkable difference from the value of a normal circulated example. So today, we are going to explore the history and background of this 1979 D Washington quarter, examine its unique features, discuss its actual rarity, look at auction market values, and explain what collectors should check before deciding whether their own coin deserves a closer examination. The Washington quarter is one of America's most recognizable denominations. The original Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design became a permanent part of American coinage and continued for decades. By 1979, the quarter was being produced in the copper-nickel-clad composition that had replaced the traditional silver composition used on earlier Washington quarters. The 1979 D issue was manufactured at the Denver Mint, identified by the small letter D on the obverse. According to PCGS, the 1979 D quarter measures approximately 24.30 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 5.67 grams, and has a reeded edge. Its composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. The Denver Mint produced 489,789,780 examples of the 1979 D Washington quarter. With such a large production figure, collectors should understand that a normal circulated example is generally common. The PCGS survival estimates also classify the regular issue as R 1.0, meaning it has very low overall numismatic rarity. This is an important lesson for anyone collecting coins. A coin can be several decades old and still be common. Age alone does not make a coin rare. Rarity comes from factors such as low survival, unusual varieties, mint errors, exceptional grades, or strong collector demand. Let's begin with the obverse, or front, of the coin. The 1979 D Washington quarter features the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. Around his portrait are the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date, 1979. Near the lower part of Washington's bust is the small D mint mark, identifying the Denver Mint. For collectors, this tiny letter is extremely important because it distinguishes the Denver issue from the Philadelphia issue of the same year. Turn the coin over, and you will see the classic Washington quarter reverse design. An American eagle with outstretched wings dominates the center of the design. Around the eagle are the inscriptions "United States of America," "E Pluribus Unum," and $quarter. The edge of the coin is reeded, meaning it contains numerous narrow grooves around the circumference. The standard specifications of approximately 5.67 grams and 24.30 millimeters can also help collectors identify a normal example. Now let's focus on the condition mentioned in today's video, very fine condition. A very fine coin has experienced significant circulation, but still retains considerable design detail. Washington's portrait remains recognizable, but the highest points show noticeable wear. The eagle and reverse lettering also show evidence of circulation. The original mint luster is generally reduced or gone, and small scratches, contact marks, and discoloration may be visible. This is important because a very fine coin is dramatically different from a mint state coin. A circulated very fine 1979 D quarter and an MS-67 1979 D quarter may have exactly the same date and mint mark, but collectors can value them very differently. Now we come to the most important question. Is the 1979 D Washington quarter actually rare? For an ordinary circulated example, the answer is generally no. Almost 490 million were struck at Denver, and PCGS classifies the issue as R 1.0 for overall numismatic rarity. However, this does not mean every 1979 D quarter is common in every condition. The situation changes significantly when we move into very high mint state grades. PCGS estimates more than 171 million surviving examples across all grades, with approximately 51 million estimated at MS-60 or better and more than 10 million at MS-65 or better. The population becomes much smaller as the grade rises, especially at the highest levels. This is why condition is so important. Imagine finding two 1979 D quarters. The first has been circulating for decades. It has visible wear, small scratches, and dull surfaces. The second looks almost untouched, with brilliant original luster and extremely clean surfaces. Although both coins are dated 1979 and carry the D mint mark, the second coin may attract far more attention from collectors because exceptional examples are much harder to find. PCGS lists an auction record of $1,078 for an MS-67 1979 D quarter, sold by Great Collections in August 2014. PCGS also records another MS-67 example that sold for $441 at Heritage Auctions in September 2013. These auction results demonstrate that high-grade examples can bring substantial premiums even when the underlying date is a common issue. But remember, those prices are for MS-67 certified coins, not ordinary very fine examples. This distinction is critical when creating an honest coin value video. A circulated 1979 D quarter should not be described as a $1,000 coin merely because another example reached $1,078 at auction. Now let's talk about the part everyone wants to know. How much could a 1979 D Washington quarter in very fine condition actually be worth? For a normal circulated 1979 D quarter in very fine condition, the value is generally modest and often close to face value. Depending on the exact grade, appearance, and current buyer demand, a circulated example may sell for around 25 cents to approximately $1 or somewhat more. It would not be realistic to claim that an ordinary very fine example is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The big prices belong to exceptional coins. PCGS currently lists the 1979 D issue in its price guide with values increasing as the grade rises, reaching substantially higher levels in the finest certified grades. The guide currently shows approximately $360 for MS-67, while the recorded auction history demonstrates that an MS-67 has actually reached $1,078 in a public sale. This difference between a price guide and an auction result is important. A price guide is an estimate or market reference, while an auction record represents what a specific buyer actually paid for a specific certified coin at a specific time. So if you have a very fine 1979 D quarter, don't look at the $1,078 auction record and assume your coin has the same value. That four-figure result belongs to an extraordinary MS-67 example. Instead, think of your circulated coin as a potentially interesting collectible that should be examined for varieties, errors, or unusually attractive surfaces. There are several things that can make an ordinary 1979 D quarter much more interesting. The first is exceptional grade. A coin that somehow survived decades without significant contact marks, scratches, or circulation where it can be much more desirable than a normal circulated example. The second is a genuine mint error. Collectors pay premiums for dramatic errors that occurred during the manufacturing process. Examples can include major off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, double strikes, wrong planchet errors, and other authenticated mint-made abnormalities. The third factor is a recognized variety. A variety is different from ordinary post-mint damage because it results from a particular die or production characteristic. Authentication is important before claiming that a particular feature is a valuable variety. The fourth factor is eye appeal. Even among coins with the same grade, collectors may prefer an example with attractive surfaces, strong luster, and an excellent strike. But always remember, damage is not automatically an error. A bent rim, scratch, gouge, discoloration, or flattened area may have happened after the coin left the mint. If you find a 1979 D Washington quarter in very fine condition, the first thing you should do is protect the coin rather than trying to improve its appearance. Do not clean the coin with vinegar, polish, abrasive materials, chemicals, or household cleaners. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and may actually reduce the coin's desirability to serious collectors. Instead, hold the quarter carefully by its edges and examine it under good lighting. Look closely at Washington's portrait, the date, the D mint mark, the lettering, and the reverse eagle. Then inspect the edge. A normal quarter should have a reeded edge. If you see something dramatically unusual, photograph it carefully before doing anything else. A small digital scale can also be useful. A normal 1979D quarter should weigh approximately 5.67 grams. If your coin is significantly different in weight, that does not automatically prove an error, but it could be a reason to investigate further. Make sure your scale is accurate and that you are comparing the result with the proper specifications. If you think you have discovered a genuine mint error or an exceptionally high-grade coin, consider consulting a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Professional authentication can be especially valuable when the potential market value is significant. For an ordinary very fine quarter, however, professional grading is usually unnecessary because the cost of certification could exceed the coin's market value. So, is the 1979D Washington quarter a rare coin? The honest answer is that a normal circulated example in very fine condition is not considered a major rarity. Nearly 490 million were struck at the Denver Mint, and PCGS gives the regular issue an overall R1.0 rarity rating. But that does not mean you should ignore this coin. The exciting part of collecting is discovering the difference between an ordinary example and an extraordinary one. A circulated 1979D quarter may be worth only a modest amount above its face value, but a superbly preserved example can be a completely different story. PCGS records a remarkable $1,078 auction result for a 1979D Washington quarter graded MS67, demonstrating that condition can dramatically change the market value of a common date coin. So if you have a 1979D quarter in very fine condition, don't assume it is a fortune, but don't ignore it either. Check the date, verify the D mint mark, examine the surfaces, inspect the edge, look for unusual mint-made characteristics, and preserve the coin properly. Most circulated examples will remain affordable collectibles, but an unusual error, recognized variety, or exceptionally high-grade specimen could be much more interesting to the collector market. And that is the real excitement of coin hunting. Sometimes the value isn't obvious when you first look at a coin. You have to slow down, examine the details, learn the history, and understand what makes one example different from another. Last and final coin, the Washington quarter dated 1989 with the Philadelphia P mint mark, especially an example showing a rusty, dark, or heavily discolored appearance. At first glance, a coin like this might look damaged and ordinary, but before you spend it or throw it into a box of common coins, there are several important things you should know. The 1989 P Washington quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint with a massive mintage of 512,868,000 coins. Because of that enormous production, a normal circulated 1989 P quarter is generally common rather than truly rare. PCGS gives the regular issue an overall R1.0 rarity rating and estimates about 179.5 million examples surviving across all grades. But there is another side to this story. While an ordinary rusty or circulated example is unlikely to be worth a fortune, exceptional uncirculated coins and genuine mint errors can bring surprisingly strong prices. PCGS records an auction record of $1,955 for a 1989 P quarter graded MS67, sold by Heritage Auctions in November 2007. So today, we are going to examine the history, design, rarity, collector demand, realistic market value, and the important features that could make a 1989 P Washington quarter more interesting to collectors. The Washington quarter is one of the most recognizable denominations in American coinage. The original Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington and commemorate the 200th anniversary of his birth. The design became one of the longest-running designs in United States coinage. By 1989, Washington quarters were being produced using a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than the 90% silver composition found on many earlier Washington quarters. The 1989 P issue was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and carries the P mint mark on the obverse. According to PCGS and Gray Sheet, the 1989 P quarter has a diameter of approximately 24.30 millimeters, a weight of about 5.67 grams, and a reeded edge. The coin is composed of copper and nickel over a copper center. Philadelphia produced 512,868,000 examples of the 1989 P Washington quarter. That number is extremely important when evaluating rarity. A large mintage means that the date itself is not scarce, and collectors can still find many examples today. However, mintage is only one part of the story. Millions of coins may have been produced, but the number surviving in exceptional condition can be much smaller. That is where high-grade collecting becomes interesting. Let's begin with the obverse, or front, of the coin. The 1989 P. Washington quarter features the famous portrait of George Washington facing left, designed by John Flanagan. The word liberty appears above Washington, while In God We Trust appears beside his portrait. The date 1989 appears at the bottom of the obverse. Near Washington's hair ribbon is the small P mint mark, identifying Philadelphia as the mint where this quarter was produced. When you turn the coin over, you see the classic eagle reverse used on Washington quarters during this period. The eagle has its wings fully extended and holds a bundle of arrows. Around the eagle are the inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and quarter dollar. The edge is reeded, with many narrow grooves around the circumference. These physical characteristics can be useful when checking whether a coin is consistent with a normal 1989 P. Washington quarter. Now let's talk about the most noticeable feature in today's coin, the rusty condition. A rusty-looking quarter can have brown, orange, reddish, black, or dull areas. However, collectors should understand that copper nickel-clad quarters do not normally develop rust in exactly the same way as an iron object. What looks like rust may actually be environmental staining, corrosion, discoloration, chemical exposure, or damage to the coin's surfaces. This distinction is extremely important because ordinary post-mint damage does not automatically create a valuable error. When we talk about the rarity of the 1989 P. Washington quarter, honesty is essential. The normal circulated coin is not considered a rare date. More than 512 million were produced, and PCGS estimates roughly 179.5 million surviving examples across all grades. Its overall rarity classification is R 1.0, which is at the common end of the PCGS rarity scale. So why do some 1989 P quarters sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars? The answer is condition and unusual characteristics. A normal circulated quarter has experienced years of contact with other coins, pockets, cash registers, machines, and other surfaces. Scratches and wear are common, but a coin preserved in nearly perfect condition can become much more difficult to locate. PCGS records an impressive $1,955 auction record for an MS-67 1989 P. Washington quarter, sold by Heritage Auctions on November 29, 2007. Another PCGS recorded MS-67 example sold for $1,292.50 at Heritage Auctions in August 2017, and PCGS lists a $1,500 price guide value for that certified example. These results are exciting, but they should not be misunderstood. Those coins were professionally graded MS-67, meaning they were extraordinary uncirculated specimens. A rusty circulated coin is not automatically worth anything close to those amounts. There is also strong collector interest in genuine mint errors. Graysheet records several 1989 P error coins, including a 55% off center MS-64 example that sold for $180 in December 2024, a 35% off center example that sold for $89 in April 2024, and a struck-through grease example that sold for $84 in June 2023. These auction results show that the right error can dramatically increase the value of an otherwise common date. Now comes the question every coin hunter wants answered. How much is a 1989 P. Washington quarter worth? For a normal circulated example, the answer is usually close to face value. Current market references show ordinary circulated 1989 P quarters generally trading for roughly 25 cents to around $1, depending on grade and buyer demand. Numismatics' current indicative values are also close to face value for lower grade examples. If the coin is heavily circulated, scratched, stained, or rusty looking, its value will normally remain modest unless there is another important collectible feature. Coin World currently lists guide values for the 1989 P copper nickel-clad quarter starting around the face value range and rising with grade, with significantly higher numbers appearing for very high-grade examples. the story becomes very different for exceptional certified coins. PCGS records the $1,955 MS-67 auction record, while another certified MS-67 example brought $1,292.50 in 2017. There is also a fascinating middle ground: genuine mint errors. A 1989 P quarter struck dramatically off-center can be worth substantially more than a normal example. Recent graysheet auction records include an MS-64 quarter struck 55% off-center selling for $180, while another 35% off-center example sold for $89. So the realistic value story is this: a normal rusty circulated 1989 P quarter is generally a low-value collectible, while a spectacular high-grade example or authenticated mint error can reach tens, hundreds, or even more than $1,000. Now let's focus specifically on the rusty appearance. If your 1989 P quarter has reddish-brown or dark discoloration, don't immediately assume that the mint created it. Environmental exposure can change the appearance of a coin after it leaves the mint. Moisture, chemicals, soil, storage conditions, and contact with other materials can produce unusual colors and surface changes. These are generally considered post-mint conditions rather than valuable mint errors. A genuine mint error is something that occurred during the manufacturing process. For example, a major off-center strike or an incorrect planchet can be far more interesting to collectors than ordinary corrosion. This is why experienced collectors don't simply ask, "Does this coin look strange?" They ask, "Why does this coin look strange?" That question can make all the difference. If you discover a rusty-looking 1989 P Washington quarter, the first rule is simple: do not clean it aggressively. Do not use vinegar, lemon juice, metal polish, abrasive materials, sandpaper, or other household chemicals. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and remove evidence that might help determine the coin's history. Instead, hold the quarter carefully by its edge and examine it under strong, neutral lighting. Look at the date, the P mint mark, Washington's portrait, the lettering, the eagle, and the edge. Pay special attention to anything that appears unusual and consistent across the design. Look for major off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, double strikes, missing portions of the design, or other characteristics that appear to have happened during striking. The weight can also be checked with an accurate digital scale. A normal 1989 P quarter should weigh approximately 5.67 grams. If your coin has a substantially unusual weight along with a strange appearance, it may deserve further examination. But remember that a small difference on an inexpensive household scale does not automatically prove an error. If you believe you have a genuine mint error or an exceptionally high-grade example, consider showing the coin to a reputable dealer or professional grading service. For an ordinary rusty circulated quarter, professional grading usually would not make financial sense. The grading cost could easily exceed the value of the coin. The smartest approach is to learn the basics first, identify promising characteristics, and then consider professional authentication only when the coin has genuine potential. So, is the 1989 P Washington quarter a rare coin? The honest answer is that a normal circulated example is not rare. Philadelphia produced more than 512 million examples, and PCGS gives the regular issue an overall R1.0 rarity rating. But that doesn't mean the coin is worthless or uninteresting. The real excitement comes from finding an example that is dramatically different from the ordinary coins that survive in circulation. An exceptional MS-67 example has reached $1,955 at auction, while another MS-67 example sold for $1,292.50. Genuine mint errors can also command strong premiums. Recent auction records include 1989 P quarters struck significantly off-center, with one MS-64 example selling for $180. But if your particular 1989 P quarter is rusty and circulated, don't automatically call it a $1,000 coin. Its discoloration may simply be environmental damage, and most worn examples remain close to face value. Instead, examine it carefully. Check the date. Confirm the P mint mark. Inspect the edge. Look for genuine mint-made errors. Check the weight. Most importantly, protect the coin and avoid cleaning it. That is the real lesson of coin collecting. Not every old coin is rare, but every unusual coin deserves a closer look. So the next time you find a dirty or rusty 1989 Washington quarter in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or pocket, don't immediately throw it away. Take a second look. You might discover nothing more than a common quarter, but you could also discover an unusual mint error or an exceptionally preserved specimen that deserves professional attention. So before you spend that old quarter, take a second look. Check the date, inspect the P mint mark, examine the edge, and look carefully for anything unusual. You never know when an ordinary-looking coin could turn out to be something special. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next rare coin discovery. Share this video with your fellow coin hunters, and let us know in the comments what unusual Washington quarter you have found. Thanks for watching. Keep searching your old coins, and remember, the next valuable coin could be hiding right in your pocket. Happy coin hunting!